Abyssinia was the target of Europe during the scramble for Africa. The Black Christian Empire in the Horn of Africa was protected by its mountainous range. Hence, not only was Christianity protected, but also Abyssinia's territorial integrity. Italy, one of the European colonizing countries, had set its eyes on Ethiopia in 1886, 1 year after the 1885 Berlin Conference. After attempting to take over the empire and losing in a historic defeat, Italy began to plan as to how they would create an East African kingdom. The attempted conquests of Ethiopia were a triumph for the Ethiopians since it ushered in a new line of thinking, was the foundation for Pan-Africanism, as well as it secured Ethiopia's integrity. To further understand the 1936 Italian invasion of Ethiopia, we must go back to look at the Battle of Adwa. After concluding the Berlin Conference hosted by Germany's Chancellor Otto von Bismarck, European superpowers not only set their eyes on the Congo Free State, they also began to draft maps to carve Africa like a pie. Italy set its eyes on Ethiopia, since it was the only country in Africa never to be colonized, and still is. In 1896, Italy planned an assault against Emperor Menelik II's troops. However, the emperor's troops were feared for their bravery, and with decisive planning, the Nugusa Nagast united the Tigrayans, Amhara, and his native Shuans to fight in Adwa against Italy. It became Europe's most humiliating defeat in Africa, which fueled Benito Mussolini's ideas of having an East African empire. After the death of Emperor Tewodros II on April 13, 1868, Italy slowly entered Ethiopia through Assab, a port near the southern entrance of the Red Sea. Assab was bought from the local sultan in March 1870 by an Italian entity. Once the Italian company gained more land, it was bought by the Italian government in 1882. Then, on May 2, 1889, the Nugusa Nagast signed the Treaty of Wuchale after Italy's humiliating defeat, granting them a portion of northern Ethiopia, now parts of modern-day sovereign Eritrea and the Tigray state, as well as the Afar state, which are both incorporated in Ethiopia. His incentive was as selfish as Italy's promise to the Nugus: 30,000 rifles, ammunition, and cannons. However, the powerful King of Kings was duped by Italy. In the Italian version of the treaty, it stated that Italy would have it protected over all Ethiopia. The betrayed Nugusa Nagast protested, saying that the Amharic version had nothing to do with Italy having control all over Ethiopia. However, the day came. It was at St. George's Church in Adwa that the emperor and his strong army took to the Adwa Mountains to fight Italy. The Battle of Adwa, as it's called, was the most important Black African defeat over Europe on March the 1st of 1896. Later that year, on October 28, 1896, Italy signed a provisional treaty with Abyssinia's Emperor Menelik II, recognizing Ethiopia as a sovereign nation. Benito Mussolini, the fascist dictator of Italy, had forever a desire for an Italian empire, reminiscent of the Roman Empire, to rule over the Mediterranean and Africa. The United Kingdom and France both had large empires at the time, and some other European countries had no colonial possessions like Italy. Abyssinia was a prime candidate of this expansionist goal for several reasons. It was the only African nation that wasn't a European colony, and it was served to unify Eritrea, which was occupied by permission of the former Ethiopian Emperor Menelik II. With Ethiopia under Italy, it would give the foundation for forming Italian East Africa, or Africa Orientale Italiana, which would also include Italian Somaliland. Ethiopia was considered to be militarily weak and rich in resources. The League of Nations declared Italy the aggressor and started the slow process of imposing sanctions, literally dragging its feet on resolutions. These did not extend to several vital materials such as oil. The British and French argued that if they refused to sell oil to the Italians, they would then simply get it from the United States, which was not a member of the League. The League was afraid that by sanctioning and condemning Italy, it would persuade Benito Mussolini to align himself more with Adolf Hitler's Nazi Germany. By mid-December, Di Bono was replaced by General Pietro Badoglio because of his slow and cautious nature. On January 20th, 1936, the Italians resumed the offensive at the First Battle of Tembin in the northern Tigray province. In addition to conventional weaponry, Italy also made use of mustard gas in both artillery and aerial bombardments. In total, the Italians deployed between 300 and 500 tons of mustard gas during the war, disregarding the 1925 Geneva Protocol. The deployment of gas was very indiscriminate, attacking both civilians and troops. The Italians had shown no remorse. Mussolini and his generals sought to cloak the operations of chemical warfare in the utmost secrecy, but the crimes of the fascist army were revealed to the world after the denunciations of the International Red Cross and of many foreign observers. The triumph of Ethiopia begins when the United Kingdom calls in General Wingate, a distinguished Ethiopian general from Cairo to Khartoum, in order to coordinate an offensive on Ethiopia. He assured the existing Ethiopian emperor in exile in Bath, England, Emperor Haile Selassie I, that they would be able to take back Ethiopia, and was very enthusiastic about the job. General Wingate organized the Ethiopian Patriot movements into one big force, which also compromised Ethiopian refugees in Khartoum. They made their attack through Gojam, which was in the lands bordering between the northwestern Ethiopia's Amhara region. The UK was very eager to defeat Italy in a decisive victory for Africa. It became their overarching dream, which somewhat blinded them from the reality that they were dealing with actual lives. The Italian invasion and occupation of Ethiopia was a triumph for Ethiopians and blacks everywhere. The return of the emperor ushered in a new arena of politics, imperial consolidation, thinking, and the demands of a new political structure. Haile Selassie's plight ends in a tragedy, as in 1974 he's ousted in a Marxist coup d'etat and killed a few months afterwards. However, the plight of the Ethiopians was a triumph for the African continent. It proved that the Ethiopian territorial integrity would never be able to be questioned or compromised by any foreign powers. After all, had it not been for Prime Minister Winston Churchill sponsoring Haile Selassie's return to the Ethiopian crown, Ethiopian history could have been different. Even when Haile Selassie returned, the UK was quick to recognize Ethiopia as a sovereign nation and as Haile Selassie as the head. While the plight of the Ethiopians has not always been favorable, one thing that is how the Ethiopians are always nationalistic and will never have their pride compromised by the foreign powers.